I'm Diane Macedo. Thanks for streaming with us. We begin with a tragic pandemic milestone. The White House reports 1 million American lives have been lost to COVID-19. We have a live look at the White House flag now flying at half staff. President Biden spoke today with world leaders at a virtual summit on the pandemic, and earlier he released a recorded message to Americans.
This pandemic isn't over. Today, we mark a tragic milestone here in the United States. 1 million COVID deaths, 1 million empty chairs around the family dinner table. Each irreplaceable losses. Each leaving behind a family, a community, forever changed because of this pandemic. My heart goes out to all of those who are struggling.
The milestone comes more than 2 years after the first COVID cases emerged in the U.S. And as President Biden announced some new efforts to fight the pandemic, the next steps come with significant and immediate challenges. Let's bring in ABC News medical contributor and Stanford Health physician, Dr. Alok Patel, along with ABC's Kenneth Moton in Washington for more on this. Dr. Patel, some doctors and other frontline workers have said that they haven't been able to take the time to process these vast number of deaths because there's been this never-ending rush of sick patients coming in. So how important is that processing time, and what kind of fallout do you think we could see from not having it?
Diane, it's extremely important. I mean, as we face this unsurmountable, incredibly, possibly the most humbling slap in the face in the history of public health, we have to pay attention to what healthcare professionals have gone through. And as you mentioned, doctors are still overburdened. Nurses, technicians, secretaries, environmental services, everybody working in a hospital. And it's not simply from COVID-19, it's from everything else also surrounding our healthcare infrastructure. And we have to remember that when we look at these 1 million deaths, it's hard for me to even say the words. We also have to consider how many other indirect casualties they've been from overburdened hospital systems, while we still have so much burnout among professionals. And I'm just going to be completely blunt. The solutions are not in place. The solutions in terms of making sure that we don't have a healthcare professional shortage and we have a more efficient healthcare system moving forward, that plan has not been seen yet. So a lot of people, a lot of healthcare professionals out there are not only feeling emotionally drained, there's a certain lack of optimism right now moving forward.
Now, Kenneth, the president addressed these 1 million lives lost today and called this a new phase in the fight against this pandemic. What does he mean by that?
And it's a critical next phase because the health experts continue to point out, Diane, that if the world wants to get out of this pandemic, that much of the world will have to be vaccinated, will have to be boosted. And so you heard President Biden address that and say that we also, as a country, need to step up our efforts to share COVID-19 technologies with the World Health Organization and other nations as well, because this pandemic has really shown how interconnected we are. And if we want to prevent travel restrictions, if we want to end those supply chain problems, this has shown us that we have to connect here. We have to help each other as well. And if we want to stop all COVID-19 related deaths, President Biden reminding people that this is a global issue and that we all have to figure this out together.
And Kenneth, looking at some of the things that he detailed, you mentioned sharing technology with the World Health Organization. Also, he mentioned stepping up antiviral access to antiviral treatments and rapid testing. What kind of an impact is the White House hoping those measures have?
Well, they're hoping for some good news by sharing with the World Health Organization and other countries here because they know that this is a complicated situation when it comes to sharing across borders, that there really could be some logistical challenges here, especially as we deal and the world deals with supply chain issues. But it's hoping by communicating, sharing what COVID-19 technologies our doctors have explored, our scientists and researchers are working on here that can help other countries, because I mentioned minutes ago about travel restrictions. That has an impact on economies across the world, including the economy right here in the U.S., and President Biden knows that.
Sure does. And Dr. Patel, Moderna has confirmed to ABC News that it has finished submitting data to the FDA on vaccines for children as young as 6 months old. When do you think we could see that approval or authorization, I should say, come through? And how significant do you think that would be?
And I think the approval, if it does happen, if we do see that clear safety and efficacy data, it's going to happen at some point in June. There are a few meetings planned by the FDA and the Independent Advisory Committee. And it's important for people to understand that this is a vaccine not only the approval is set for 6 months to 6 years, but also with Moderna, 6 years to 11 years old. Now, with 6 years to 11 years old, one thing that people will be looking for is what they call an immunobridging study. Translation, they see a rise in the antibody level in this age group, and they compare that to what we've seen in adults. And I think a lot of parents out there for kids under the age of 6 are paying close attention because they want to get their kids protected. They want that option. But with regards to, are we going to see a huge bump in that age group of 6 to 11? I'm not so sure, to be completely honest, because we have a vaccine available for that age group from Pfizer, and less than 30% of eligible children have gotten that. And so, we want to see that number up. And I think in order to do that, we're going to have a lot more dialogue, obviously dispel some misinformation, which seems like the song of this entire pandemic, and make sure we listen to parents' concerns and we address them directly.
All right, Dr. Alok Patel, Kenneth Moten in D.C. for us. Thank you both.
Thank you.
And these 1 million deaths are more than just a statistics. They're someone's loved one, a parent, a child, a brother, a sister, or a friend. Here's a video diary from Pamela Addison, a widow who founded the Young Widows and Widowers of COVID-19 group on Facebook after losing her husband to COVID during the pandemic. Take a look.
My life was forever changed 2 years ago when I lost my amazing healthcare hero husband, Martin, to COVID-19. He was at the beginning of this pandemic. It was completely unexpected. It was at the time when you weren't hearing that young people were dying of COVID. And we were in isolation. And I lost him. I was alone with a 2-year-old and a 5-month-old. And the day he died, I was stunned in shock, and I didn't know what to do because now I was thrown into this new life of being a solo mommy to 2 very young children, 2 young children who I knew that were going to miss a lifetime of moments with their dad, who they lovingly called Papa. When my husband passed away, I knew I had to tell my daughter that her papa was never going to come home again. She saw him loaded onto the ambulance the day I called 911, and every night I would tell her that he was with the doctors who were trying to make him better. I remember the moment still when I told her that Papa didn't get better and he wasn't going to come home. And now that he was in heaven because he died, I didn't know what to do to make her pain go away and to help her get through it. And now today she'll still have moments. She's 4. She sometimes just randomly comes up to me and asks me, "Mommy, why wasn't Papa here for a long time?" There's so many family members, friends, colleagues that have lost someone important to them in that 1 million. And there's so many people grieving a loss of a loved one to COVID. And I think never in my wildest dreams, when my husband passed away in April of 2020, did I think in May of 2022 we would have hit 1 million deaths from COVID. I thought when my husband passed away that we were going to figure out COVID and that less and less people would die and less people would have to go through what my family went through. And it really is surreal that we have now reached the 1 millionth milestone mark. And I just really think it's important to realize just how many people are struggling with their grief, are struggling with an unexpected turn in their lives, and just trying to figure out how to survive and help our children get through some really challenging and difficult and a devastating loss. And I really just hope that people understand that COVID will never really be over for those who have lost a loved one, because COVID is what changed our lives forever.
And ABC News Live will have much more coverage of the U.S. marking 1 million lives lost throughout today and in the days ahead. ABC News will also bring you a special report, The Orphans of COVID, with David Muir, debuting tonight here on ABC News Live. Coming up, a wildfire emergency is growing out west. What we're learning about evacuations in the homes already destroyed when we come back. Welcome back. Finland leaders have announced support for the country to join NATO, breaking with the country's longstanding policy of neutrality. Finland's president and prime minister have called for the country to apply for membership, quote, without delay. Sweden is taking similar steps to join the military alliance amid fears of a larger war. ABC News foreign correspondent Tom Sufi-Burridge joins me live now from Kyiv, Ukraine, with more on this. Tom, Finland shares an 830-mile-long border with Russia. Opinion polls there show support for joining NATO. How soon do you think this could happen, and what are the ramifications?
Diane, this could happen in a matter of days. It's hugely significant. Of course, this is something that Vladimir Putin has always wanted to avoid, but ironically, by invading Ukraine, he is pushing Sweden and Finland into the NATO alliance. And we've seen interesting language from NATO member states like the United Kingdom in the last 24 hours, saying that while the accession process continues once they apply, to avoid the risk of Russia attacking Finland and Sweden, the UK and other NATO allies, like the United States, will effectively guarantee their security. So effectively, they will benefit from what's called Article 5, and it means that if any NATO member state is attacked, then it's an attack on all NATO member states.
Now, this week, Ukraine's foreign minister said he hopes the country can become a candidate for EU membership next month. Could that change the trajectory of this war?
I don't think so. I think it's going to take a very, very long time for Ukraine to become a member of the European Union. The French President, Emmanuel Macron, recently said that he thinks it's going to take decades. The reason for that is that for a country to get into the European Union, they have to meet a very strict number of tests, things like human rights. But I think the area that Ukraine is going to have to work hardest on, and it's been working hard at it since 2014, since it signed an agreement with the European Union to go in this direction, is corruption. Corruption has been a historic problem in this country. It's a Soviet-era hangover. And I think the Ukrainians have still got some work to do to convince the European Union they've done enough on that.
And Tom, as of late, Russia seems much more focused on the eastern part of Ukraine and trying to capture the Donbas region. But Ukrainian defense officials are now saying they believe Putin still intends to capture Kyiv. What are you hearing on that front?
Well, we've seen the Ukrainian positions as we've driven out of this city in the last couple of days. There's no sense that Ukraine is at ease in any of its cities, really, apart from a bit more relaxed right over in the west of the country. You're right, the focus of the fighting is definitely in the Donbass. The Russians saying they're making gains, but there's no real evidence that they're actually making any breakthroughs in that fighting at the moment. And if anything, they're being pushed back around the second biggest city up in the northeast near Kharkiv. Russia is striking a lot of Ukrainian cities, including civilian targets, on a daily basis. Overnight, we saw attacks in Chernihiv region up in the northeast near the Belarusian and Russian border. And we've just had reports actually from Ukrainian officials saying there's been a strike in Poltava in the center of Ukraine.
Now, any updates on the civilians who were trapped at that steel plant in Mariupol?
There's been some confusion about this, Diane, I think, in the last few days. We understand now from some of the fighters trapped in the plant who are fighting still, who are defending the Azovstal plant in that city, Mariupol, which has been obliterated by the Russians, remember. They say that all civilians are out. There's been some mixed messages from the Ukrainian officials over the last few days, but we believe that all civilians are out of there now.
All right, Tom Sufi-Burridge, we will take that small piece of good news. Thank you. And evacuations are underway as a wildfire burns through a community in Southern California. At least 20 homes have already been destroyed. Chief National Correspondent Matt Gutman is in Laguna Niguel, California, with the latest.
That wildfire fueled by coastal winds ripping through an upscale neighborhood in Southern California, prompting those mandatory evacuations. Our station, KBC's chopper, capturing the magnitude of that fire as it destroyed at least 20 homes in Orange County's hillside enclave of Laguna Niguel.
The wind is really the critical factor.
Residents fleeing what started as a small brush fire around 2:30 p.m. suddenly exploding across the landscape, consuming almost 200 acres.
I'm gonna die smoke inhalation.
The fire engulfing everything in its path, from palm trees to power lines. Firefighters scrambling to slow the spread and save as many homes as possible. But many of those multi-million-dollar mansions left gutted.
It's not looking good. Every other house is on fire on one side of the street. Our house could be on fire. I don't know.
Gusting wind sending embers swirling onto rooftops, and soon home after home went up in flames. Shells of homes and cars left simmering. Making matters worse, drought-induced water shortages are hampering firefighters' efforts. The first 4 months of this year, the driest on record in California.
The fuels beds in this county, throughout Southern California, throughout the West, are so dry that, fire like this is going to be more commonplace.
Diane, overnight fire officials calling this a climate change-driven fire. They said the humidity was actually high. It was actually very cool yesterday, and even those winds were not that ferocious, but everything out here is so incredibly dry from this record drought. They said we're going to see a lot more of it. Now, you can see how many houses on this block have been burnt down. We haven't seen anything like this in Southern California in at least a couple of years. And firefighters and officials say we are likely to see a lot more of this in the coming months here. Diane.
All right, sad news there. Matt Gutman, thank you. Coming up, the White House is set to announce new actions to address the dire baby formula shortage across the U.S. What we're learning when we come back. Welcome back to ABC News Live. The Supreme Court justices are meeting today for the first time since the leak of the draft opinion that would overturn Roe v. Wade. Only the justices will be in the room. The meeting comes after Senate Republicans blocked a bill that would ensure national access to abortion. President Biden will speak with baby formula manufacturers and retailers today for an update on the nationwide shortage. Abbott, one of the largest baby formula manufacturers, says it could take up to 10 weeks to get its products back on store shelves. More than 40% of the country's formula inventory has been out of stock. The FDA says it's working with other manufacturers to boost supply. And a passenger plane burst into flames after skidding off the runway in China. The jet was carrying more than 120 people. Everyone was safely evacuated and only minor injuries have been reported. South Korea's military says North Korea fired 3 short-range ballistic missiles toward the sea today. It's the latest in a series of weapons demonstrations this year, and it comes just hours after the Kim Jong-un's regime confirmed its first case of coronavirus since the pandemic started. A nearly $1 billion settlement has been reached in last year's deadly Surfside condo building collapse in the Miami Beach area. The settlement would pay relatives of the victims and survivors of the collapse $997 million. 98 people were killed when the 12-story building partially collapsed in the middle of the night last June. And we're celebrating Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Today, we're taking a closer look at a group of chefs working together to fight hate with food. Juju Chang has their story.
Vietnamese flavors fused with his Cajun childhood. It's Chef Kevin Tien's specialty at his hot DC restaurant, Moon Rabbit.
My mom was still in her teens when she had me. And as the oldest in an Asian household, it's always the responsibility for us to take care of all the siblings. So for me, it was cooking for my little sister.
Why is food such a great window into culture?
The first time you experience another culture, most likely, it's probably through food, right? It's kind of like the gateway into learning about someone's family, their history, their culture.
Chef Tim Ma grew up in Arkansas. His parents' Chinese restaurant, the only one in town. Back in the 70s, they didn't always feel welcome.
Me and my sister's bedroom, our window faced the street. Something got hurled, we heard glass breaking, and then we heard words, and then we heard people driving off.
And so how did that come into play when you started seeing incidents of AAPI hate? in a modern setting?
It was more us thinking about the older generation because that's who you saw in the videos. And so, like, you know, that looks like my mom, that looks like my grandfather.
Last year, during the height of the pandemic, with attacks against Asian Americans spiking 339% across the country, the Friends felt a call to action.
Growing up, it's always like, keep your head down, don't let things bother you, ignore everything, and brush it to the side. But I think, like, years and years of brushing it to the side, I think a lot of people think you can, like, take advantage or talk down to the Asian community or never think they'll, like, speak up.
Together, they formed Chefs Stopping AAPI Hate as a way to fight back the best way they know how, with food.
Me and Kevin and a few other Asian American chefs in DC, and middle of the pandemic, the only thing we could really do was these takeout dinners. We were like, okay, 5 chefs, 5 courses, let's do a dinner, and it sold out like immediately. And then it would just kind of like snowballed from there.
In the past year, Chefs Stopping AAPI Hate has raised about $500,000. The group expanding to New York, Detroit, San Francisco.
Table 53 waiters.
And pivoting to support causes as the needs arrive, hosting benefit dinners to help Ukrainian refugees.
This is insane. This is so beautiful.
At the center of it all, the incredible food.
Our fried chicken is based off of gachien nuoc mam, which is like a Vietnamese street food. Here we make our fish sauce caramel with a lot of smoked chilies, fresh chilies.
And while we dig into this delicious banquet, the pair can't help but point out it's not just the food that's hot and spicy.
Did you know in 2013, Tim was Eater DC's sexiest chef?
Wow. Wait, I did know that. Weren't you People Magazine's sexiest chef?
Absolutely. Which is like nice to see because, you know, like normally like Asian men aren't perceived as sexy, right?
1,000%.
Yeah.
But that's changing. You guys are changing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
If food is love, then Chefs Stopping AAPI Hate are literally fighting hate with love. And of course, they're continuing with a major event next May at Kevin's restaurant, Moon Rabbit. Diane?
Juju Chang making us all very hungry here in studio. Thanks, Juju. And this week, we're also celebrating the 25th anniversary of ABCnews.com, which first launched back in 1997. The site has changed as much as we have over those years. We wanted to say a big thank you to all our incredibly talented colleagues who helped launch this important part of ABC News and who bring us into the future in new ways every single day. And of course, thanks to you for watching. I'm Diane Macedo. Stay with us as ABC News Live continues with news, context, and analysis right after this. Yay! Meryl waves.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.